It was a quiet evening at Walmart, around 8 p.m. The store wasn't too busy, and I was casually browsing the fitness aisle, considering a massage gun. I wasn't planning to buy one just yet, but I wanted to read up on them. As I stood there, I started hearing faint voices from the next aisle over, the toy section. I remember hearing a man's voice and the softer, more innocent voice of a child. At first, I didn't think anything of it. After all, it was the toy aisle. Parents and kids were always wandering through there. But then I overheard the man say, "I'll buy you this toy if you come with me." My stomach tightened, and my hands froze on the box I was holding. There was something unsettling in the way he said it. Too urgent, too persuasive. I still didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was just a dad using a toy as leverage to get his kid to behave. But then I heard the man say, "Your mom said it's okay." And something about the tone in his voice made my heart skip. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. This didn't feel right. I told myself I was being paranoid, but I couldn't shake the growing dread. Trying to stay calm, I casually walked out of the fitness aisle and turned into the toy aisle, just to glance at the situation. What I saw made my blood run cold. There was a man in a black jacket and a winter hat, holding a little girl's hand. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old. He was leading her toward the end of the aisle, but something about their body language felt wrong. The girl didn't look up at him. Her steps were small, hesitant, as if she didn't fully trust him. I felt my heart race as I realized I needed to do something, but what? My mind was racing. I didn't want to accuse the man outright if he really was her father. So I grabbed the closest toy off the shelf, a stuffed animal, and called out, "Excuse me." The man turned around, and his face told me everything I needed to know. His eyes were wide with surprise, his expression stiff, like he had been caught. I approached them, pretending to ask for advice. "Do you think this would make a good gift for my niece?" I asked, trying to sound casual as my pulse thundered in my ears. He stammered, saying he wasn't sure. Then, I asked directly, "Is this your daughter?" He hesitated for a fraction of a second, then said, "No, I'm just watching her for the moment." His answer sent a chill down my spine. There was no warmth in his voice, no familiarity. It was robotic, rehearsed. He quickly muttered something about needing to go and started leading the girl away again. My mind was screaming at me to do something, but part of me was still second-guessing myself. Was this just a misunderstanding? I was rooted to the spot, not knowing whether to follow or call for help. As I stood there frozen, I heard a woman's voice in the distance calling out a name. "Sarah! Sarah!" Her voice was frantic but not loud, more like a desperate plea. My heart sank. The little girl's name was Sarah. I bolted toward the voice, finding a woman a few aisles away. She looked panicked, her eyes darting around. "Is Sarah your daughter?" I asked breathlessly. When she nodded, I felt my stomach drop, and I quickly explained that I had just seen her with a man. Her face went pale, and without another word, we both sprinted toward the front of the store. The dread building inside me was unbearable. We had to find her. We had to stop them before they disappeared. When we reached the self-checkout area, there they were. The man was standing at one of the machines, casually scanning an item, a toy for the little girl. Sarah stood beside him, looking confused but not resisting. The girl's mother screamed her name and everything happened so fast. The man's face contorted in panic and he tried to play it off. "I was just trying to be nice. I was going to buy her a toy," he said, but the desperation in his voice was undeniable. As soon as he realized no one was buying his story, he bolted. He ran so fast, slipping through the doors and out of sight before security even had a chance to react. The mother hugged her daughter tightly, tears streaming down her face. My legs were shaking as I watched them, relief washing over me. But my mind was racing with the possibilities of what could have happened if I hadn't intervened. Later, I found out that the man was caught not far from the store. He was arrested, but I couldn't get the thought out of my head. He was so close to disappearing with that little girl. I couldn't shake the terror of how easily it could have all gone horribly wrong.
I'm a woman who works in an office, and I love cooking. After work, I often stop by Walmart to pick up groceries. There's one close to my apartment, and it usually has the cheapest prices. This routine had been going on for months without any issues. One day, as I was browsing the produce section, a Walmart employee greeted me. He was bald, had a small dark beard, and seemed friendly. I didn't think much of it, but a couple of days later, I saw him again in the same section, and he greeted me with the same friendliness. I realized this was becoming a pattern. Every time I visited, he would come up to me, initiating casual conversations. It started with simple questions about how my day was going, but gradually, he began asking more personal questions, like where I worked, if I lived nearby, and what my plans were for the evening. This made me a little uncomfortable, but I convinced myself he was just being overly friendly. Then one day, while I was grabbing a few items, he approached me again and asked for my number. I politely declined, explaining I wasn't comfortable with that. His demeanor changed instantly. Without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving me feeling uneasy. I finished shopping quickly and headed to the parking lot. As I got into my car, I noticed him sitting in a car nearby. It caught my attention because it was close enough to make me feel uneasy, though he wasn't looking directly at me. When I drove out of the parking lot, my heart sank. He pulled out behind me. I made the same turns toward my apartment, and he followed, staying close. It was clear he was following me home. Not wanting to lead him to my apartment complex, I circled around, but he kept trailing me. Panicking, I merged onto a busy road, making a last-second cut in front of another car to lose him. Luckily, it worked, and he couldn't follow me through the traffic. Furious, I decided to go back to Walmart and report him. But when I described him to customer service, I was shocked. They told me no one matching his description worked there. It turns out he wasn't even an employee. He must have been wearing a fake Walmart vest, maybe bought online or from another store. This made the situation even more terrifying. I've never gone back to that Walmart, and thankfully, I haven't seen him since.
In 2014, I worked a job with unpredictable hours, often getting off work late at night. One night, I finished a shift around 3 a.m. Exhausted and starving, I stopped by the local 24-hour Walmart, hoping to grab a snack before heading home. The store was eerily quiet, its usual hustle and bustle replaced by silence, with only a handful of employees scattered around. I wandered down the snack aisle trying to decide what to get, when I suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of unease. It was that feeling when you just know someone is watching you. My skin prickled, and I slowly glanced toward the end of the aisle. Standing there, in the dimly lit aisle, was a tall, thin man wearing a black Adidas sweatshirt. He wasn't looking at the shelves or at the products. He was just standing there, staring directly at me. I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting. Maybe he was just zoned out or lost in thought. But something about the way he stood there motionless made my stomach twist in knots. His presence was wrong. I turned back to the shelves, pretending to browse, but I couldn't focus. My heart was beating faster, and every nerve in my body was screaming that something wasn't right. After a minute, I moved to the next aisle, hoping he would stay where he was. But as soon as I entered the new aisle, I saw him again. This time, peeking around the corner, his eyes fixed on me. My chest tightened with panic. It wasn't just my imagination. He was following me. I grabbed a random bag of trail mix and started walking toward the back of the store, hoping I could lose him. I glanced over my shoulder, and there he was, moving slowly, keeping a safe distance but never breaking eye contact. His face was emotionless, cold, like he was a predator stalking prey. Every step I took, he mirrored, always staying just far enough behind to make me feel like I couldn't confront him. By now, my heart was pounding in my ears, and I knew I needed to get out of there. I quickened my pace, heading toward the checkout area. But when I reached the end of the aisle, there he was again, somehow ahead of me, standing by the main walkway. He wasn't shopping. He was just watching, waiting. I pretended to ignore him and made my way to the checkout. The cashier was the only other person in sight, and as I paid for my items, I told her that someone had been following me around the store. She nodded but didn't seem to grasp the urgency in my voice. After paying, I cautiously walked toward the exit, my pulse racing. I glanced around and, to my relief, didn't see the man anywhere. Thinking I was finally free, I hurried across the parking lot to my car, which was parked a little distance from the entrance. The lot was mostly empty except for a few cars, likely belonging to employees. Just as I reached my car and unlocked the door, I heard rapid footsteps. My heart nearly stopped as I looked up. The man was sprinting toward me at full speed. His footsteps were heavy and fast, as if he was running for his life. But no, he was running for me. In that split second, my mind went blank. I stood frozen, watching him close the distance between us in terrifying speed. Then instinct kicked in. I threw open my car door, jumped in, and slammed it shut just as he was about to reach me. My hands fumbled to start the engine, and in a blind panic, I slammed the car into drive and hit the gas. I glanced in my rearview mirror, and the man was still running, chasing my car, his arms pumping furiously as if he believed he could catch me. I sped out of the parking lot, barely able to breathe, and only after I reached the main road did I look back to see the man shrinking in the distance, finally giving up. I have no idea who he was, what he wanted, or why he targeted me, but his relentless pursuit haunts me to this day. I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't just trying to scare me. He wanted something far worse. I never went back to that Walmart at night again. I still wonder what would have happened if I hadn't reacted in time.